Your microphone, and today we're visiting in the home of Mrs. Reba Powell. This is East 21st Street in Benton. And first of all, we want to thank Mrs. Powell for letting us come. We appreciate the fact that you have. And she tells me that she's 65 years old at least, and is therefore qualified to be on this oral history broadcast. Tell us about your father, if you would.
My father was Henry Wilson Castleberry, and my grandfather was William Mason Castleberry.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I'm telling it because I got it out of I had a record of it.
Yeah.
And he married Rebecca, and I'm named for her, whom I am named for.
Yes.
My name is Rebecca too.
Mm-hmm.
And so, my great grandfather was James B. Castleberry. He was married to. Wait a minute now. Let me see how you pronounce this now. Agatha.
Agatha?
Agatha Smith.
Mm-hmm. Well, you know, I had a good friend by the name of Norman Castleberry, whom you knew. I think he's a relative of yours. And he was telling me that he'd done a lot of research on the Castleberries and gone way back into history. And he said he'd even determined where the name came from. It was a fellow named Barry that lived by the castle, the old king's castle. And so that to tell people apart then, they didn't have the full names the way we have now, and social security numbers and so on. So he said, that's the Barry that lives by the castle. And they got to call him Castleberry.
Yeah. Well, see, Norman's my oldest brother's son. And now my mother was Laura Brazil.
Yes. I know there's a Brazil school
here
in the county.
Well, I'll tell you. Now, you know, Brazil school, you turn off the road like you go down to New Harmony, down in that direction, you know.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you turn off back in the Brazil schoolhouse is off that road. It's on the cut road that connects the Oak Level Highway and that highway, don't you see? Well, now that's the Brazil. Well, and then her home was this house where you turn back, right, sets way back here on this middle, this road, you know, that connects them two. Mm-hmm. And that's where my mother lived when she was young.
Yes.
And well, it's, of course, not the same house, but that's where it was.
Uh-huh.
See, that's the reason it got its Brazil name, you know. See, that was just a bunch of Brazil. Laura Brazil. And her mother was a Shamel, but now I just know that she was a Shamel. That we're just related to all the Shamels, but I don't know any further back or who they are. So we just put that. Mm-hmm. And now my oldest brother was Cleet Castleberry. My oldest brother. Now there was 8 of us in the family. Are you wanting to get this?
Oh yes.
Well,
sure. Whatever you want to say, I want to hear it.
Well, we had 8. We had 4 girls and 4 boys, and Cleet was the oldest boy. Now, then Norman was his son.
Yes.
Yeah, you know Norman, and Norman was his son. Well, then I had another brother, Jamie. Now you may sort of know Jamie because he just lived. He never did marry, and he just lived. And then I had one, Willie, and he married Lily Tubbs. But now they're both dead. But they've got children around here. I bet you know some of them. Sammy Tubbs and you know of them. Well, anyway, and then he had 2 daughters, and then he had. See, I had 4 brothers. And then I had one that got killed in a car wreck at 19. His name was Ray Castleberry. And then I had, there's 4 of us girls. I had 3 sisters, but one of them died when she was, I never did see her before I was born because I was the last. And then I come then to myself. I married, in 1920, I married Chester Powell.
Mhm.
And we had one son, Chester Ray Powell. Of course, you know him.
Yeah. Oh, yes, I know Chester
Yeah,
Ray.
I know, I knew you
I
did.
remember when he played basketball
Yeah, I
and
know.
hit those long shots out in the floor. I remember when he dated a hardened cheerleader. And they finally married,
Yeah, oh, yes, Evelyn.
Evelyn McDaniel.
Evelyn was sweet to me and good, and of course you don't need to get this on that though, because I want to just tell you this. And she has always lived by me, always. See, they've been married a long time because they've got 23. They've got them big old grandsons, you know, Terry and Ronnie, and I mean they're my grandsons, and and they've got them children, but they've lived by me always, and you know the old saying that.
Well, that is wonderful, isn't it?
Yeah,
Isn't that
it's
great?
wonderful. And
Now, I know Terry, he's a Baptist preacher, isn't he?
Uh-huh. He lives right here, but he's living in the house with them now because he resigned his church, and he's substituting at Marshall County High. So. Well, anyway, now you don't have to get those little. I'm just talking that.
Oh, now, wait a minute. All this is going on the tape.
Oh, is it really? well, all right. Chester Ray has two sons. One, listen, I'll get it a little nicer. One's a manager. The oldest one, though, works at Penwald, and he's in the planning section.
Calvert City, that sounds like a real important job.
It is.
Mhm.
So I just thought I'd put it
Mhm.
in.
Mhm.
And the other is a Baptist preacher.
Uh-huh.
Terry is the Baptist preacher.
Now, I know him. He's a fine fellow.
Yeah, I knew you did know it. But now, if I say that a little awkward, why, I'd rather not. Let me see now what I get to. To me, to us. So we had one son. Oh, yes. Then he has, Chester Ray had the two sons, and that Ronnie has 5 children, and they are all musicians.
Mhm.
You knew they were, didn't you?
No, I didn't know
They
that.
did. Well, they are. So,
I'm depending on you to tell me about them now.
when this goes out to people to read it, they'll say, that sounds just like her.
Well, all right.
Well.
Now, didn't he go to college in Georgia and play basketball?
Yes, when he graduated from Benton High School, he got a ball scholarship to Rome, Georgia.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's fine. That's real good information. Now, I'd like to get back to you and talk about your early school days. Now, you were born down in I guess the Brazil neighborhood. What
New
grade
Harmony.
school did you go to?
I started the school at New Harmony.
Mm-hmm.
We were sharecroppers, don't you see? My daddy was, and I
I
started.
know what that means. I was too. My dad was.
Yeah, and so we lived down in my young little days. While we lived in New Harmony, in that section. I started to school and went to school with the Cleek Ford, my first school. Do you remember Cleek Ford?
No, I don't remember.
Well, you know, he had a store here a long time ago, but probably you didn't live here. And I went to him a little, and then I went, they moved to where I went to Brazil, but that school, I went with two different teachers. I got there, you know, and had to stop. And one of them was Nola Thompson, Ambrose Thompson's wife.
I've heard of. Well,
Yeah.
Mr. Thompson himself taught, didn't he?
Yeah. And the other one was, wait, I'll tell you in a minute. No, I went to 2 more. I went to Miss Florence Grubbs when I was in about the 3rd grade. No, yeah, about 3rd grade I was in her, because when I come to Benton, I started in the 5th. I was in the 3rd grade to her, and then I went to a Shamel teacher when I was little like that, you know, kind of little. And then we moved to Benton.
Now, I believe you said you were about 9 years old then?
When we moved to Benton, I was 9 years old. and that was like first starting to school was Cleat Ford primer, you know what you say.
Mm-hmm.
And then the other two teachers was in the same school, but we made a move in the fall, don't you see? And I had to just went to two teachers that year, and then we moved to Benton then, and I went to.
About what year was it when you moved to Benton? Do you remember?
Well,
That doesn't matter as much as what was Benton like then.
I'll get to it and I'll tell you in a minute because I remember when it.
It didn't have
Yeah, I sure
main
did.
highway
That's
through it then, did it?
No, didn't. Well, let me see. You want me to say anything more about my school?
Oh, yes.
Well, then I started the school in Benton. I started in the 4th grade, and I went to Reginald Pace. I thought maybe you'd love to know how many schools I went to. I went to Miss Reginald Pace.
Well, she was cashier at the Bank of Hardin one time,
Yeah,
and I remember her.
Well, did you? Well, and then I went to several. I went to Mary Howard, but now I went to Mary Howard after I started in high school, and in the grades. Let me see who all didn't go to. Can't remember them much, but I went to Miss Reginald Pace, and Reba Heath. You know, I'd take some classes to one and some to another, you know, after you start in high school. You know, you don't go to the same one all the time, you know. And I went to Reba Heath with a class or so, and I don't know who all else.
Well, that's good. Now, you were then in high school here in Benton, which was the earliest high school, and I believe it opened a full high school curriculum in 1909. So they had the first high school in the county, and it was a city high school.
And Mr. Mulligan was superintendent of it.
Mm-hmm. Then the Hardin High School was the next one. It opened in the fall of 1912.
Mm-hmm.
But and then we just had 2 high schools for some time. But when they got at the top, they had 8 altogether.
And Naaman Duke taught during that time. I went to school to him some, you know, and I don't know. Just
You enjoyed your high school work?
yes, I love school. I
You-
made good grades at school.
Yeah, fine.
I don't care about
That's
that.
wonderful.
I just love school.
That's great.
Yeah.
Well, you got out of school, and did you go to work someplace in town at that time?
Yes, I've worked at different places. When I was 14, my sister was contract manager of the Cumberland Telephone Company back. Do you remember that?
Well, I've heard the name.
And so she gave me a relief job, 3 hours a day.
Mm-hmm.
And see, I could go to school and work that because I went the lunch hour. I went and relieved the one that was working that morning, and then after school I went and worked till I worked 4 hours a day.
Mm-hmm.
And I was 14 then. Well, then.
But you had your own money source, and you felt pretty good.
Yeah,
didn't
I did. Well, I've always made my money.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to overlive that. I said I'm the firstborn that never had to ask for any money.
Yeah. Well, that's good. That gave you a feeling of independence.
Then I worked for that till they sold out. It is sold out. Then I went with now that was the Marshall County, the Cumberland Telephone Company.
Mm-hmm.
And now my sister worked there too, and I worked there till I just worked in telephone office off and on quite a bit till I went to work at Morgan's store, and I worked in Morgan's store 33 years.
33?
I've just been quit 2 years.
Yeah. Well, My wife taught school in the county 34 years,
Yeah.
so
Uh-huh.
that seems like a good long while.
Yeah. Well, you know, I never did mind working. I didn't have but one boy, and he got big enough to go to school and married, married when he was 19. And so I didn't have anything to keep me from working, and
Yeah.
I never did mind working. So
Now, who did you marry?
I married Chester Powell.
All right.
and-
Now, how did you meet him?
Well, his home folks lived around New Harmony at the church, and I just met him that way.
Mhm.
Went to school with him, and I just knew his people.
You went to school with him, went to church with him, so on.
Yeah,
Yeah.
And we married in 1920.
Uh-huh.
And
Now, of course, I knew Chester Ray and
Yeah.
still know him. I discovered last year when I started eating some senior citizens breakfast at Hardin and Benton that he likes to go to those things.
yeah, he does. Chester Ray's always been a good boy, and he's always been a jolly, polite person, and of course I am too. He's got my personality.
Yeah.
I don't
All
know
right.
what- I don't-
You married, and what did your husband do?
Well, now when I married, he was just a laborer on the railroad. Then he got on public safety with
Mhm.
TVA.
Yeah.
We just kind of had we didn't have a hard time, but we just didn't have much money when we first married. We had to manage, and then, of course, when the
I don't suppose very many people in Marshall County had a great deal of money, did they?
No,
Except
no,
maybe some of
no.
the merchants
No.
got along pretty
Yeah.
well.
So we just kind of had to manage, but we managed and was blessed all along the way. And then, of course, we had Chester Ray, and we like to lost him though his second summer. He had colitis, and well, I said the Lord had a purpose for him.
Hmm.
I believe that with all my heart.
I can remember, I suppose from about the time he started the high school. So I remember him from 1938 on because he was playing on the Benton basketball team.
You see, why I said that, I thought that, why, he had just had these two big sons, Terry was called to preach and made a preacher, and Ronnie has got a family and teaches the Sunday school class in our church in the auditorium. I said he had as harder, much important job as Terry had.
Mm-hmm.
Just anybody that comes in and sits down, he does, and Terry, he teaches them. So
Mhm.
I've always just been proud of that. I'd just really rather that would just be me and you talking. But
Yeah.
that's all.
Well, now, how did you get this job at Morgan's? How did you just went in and applied for it, and they hired you, or?
Yes, I knew Thomas Morgan though, because you see, this brother of mine that got killed in the car wreck was about the age of Thomas, and they were together quite a bit, And then I knew Mr. Charlie and Miss Maggie, and as neighbors, you see, I was raised over, where Dr. Steele's home is.
Yes.
Well, you remember the old house that was torn down when they sold that lot on the corner for the hospital?
Yeah, I remember that.
I was raised in that. All of my
Oh.
life I lived right there from the time I was 9 years old till they were retired from farming, and I was married then when they still moved to Benton. My family did, but I was gone from home, you see. I married over there, and
So you were acquainted with Mr. Thomas Morgan.
yeah, I
Was his dad in a store before him?
Grocery store.
Mhm.
And well,
Was there a Morgan in Heath one time?
that was down on the corner though, where that.
Where the dime store was a
Well,
long time. Now they're
yeah,
building a kind of a little city park or something
yeah,
there. Yeah.
But I started to tell you though how I got into Morgan's store. Well, I don't know how I got in it at first, only I know I was up there, and he asked me that I want to work extra during the Christmas rush.
Mm-hmm.
And so I said, well, that sounds pretty good to me. I believe I will. And so I worked during the rush. When he went to pay me off, after we had finished the extra work, he said, I wish you'd come in my department store, for I'd love to talk to you. And so I went in there, and he said, I want to hire you in this department store. Still ready to work.
Mm-hmm. Regular job. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and now this is what he said. Don't think I'm just a bragger or anything. He said,
Well, I want you to brag a little bit.
well, now this is. He said, I want you to work in the department store. He said, I have noticed you. You've got a good personality, a good one to make people like you. You've also got a good one to make people want to come back to the store. Now that's what it is.
Well, of course, and that's what he wanted, naturally.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
right. And
That's
I,
quite complimentary to you, and I
Yes,
think you ought to be proud of it.
well, I was. And then I'm going to go telling you a little bit more when he sold the store. See, I kept on working after he sold the store. Well, so I just worked on, and oh yeah, and then so when he when he sold the store and I kept working, he said, now I won't talk to you again, Reba. He said, you worked for me 33 years. You worked longer than any woman ever did work for me. He said, I was glad to have you every day. Every day you worked for me, I was glad to have you. He said, I never felt afraid to leave anything in the world. And see, when Vera died, his wife, he put me at the cash register.
Mm-hmm.
And he said, I knew you were honest. I knew you were nice to people. And he said, you made yourself lots of friends, but you made me lots of friends.
Mm-hmm.
Now, that's got really good.
Oh, that's wonderful.
Yeah,
that's
what he
great.
said. And then when he left the store, why, he said, I kept you a long time, but I was glad every day I had you.
Mm-hmm.
Of course,
I'm glad you told me that. I knew Mr. Morgan and liked him very much. Now, let's see. He went to Florida, didn't he?
yes, married a woman down in Florida.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess that's about. But he was always complimentary. One day he said, the girls that was working in there was all standing up at the door, just not working in it, just not having cleaned up the store. He said, you run up there and tell them girls that it's time for them to get to work. I said, I can't do that, Tom. And he didn't resent me not going, but I said, now that will make them mad for me to go tell them. I said, I work as a hand just exactly like they do. Mm-hmm. I wasn't poor lady. I wasn't anything.
You weren't the manager.
I weren't the manager. I didn't have any more say-so than they did, don't you see? And I said, but I can't. I said, I'll go with you. I'll walk with you. Mm-hmm. And he said, yes, but you know. I said, that's all right. You just tell me anyhow. Mm-hmm. Don't you think that was better?
Yeah, it probably was.
Yeah. I said, you tell me anyway. I'll listen. I'll listen. And so he took me and then all right. And of course, see, I knew they'd resent me and get mad at me.
Now, you were in that store with him for 33 years. Can you think of, there must have been a lot of just fabulously funny things that happened over the years.
Well, it seems like I can't just exactly think of anything.
Now, you weren't in the business where you had to take chickens in trade and all that kind of thing, were you?
No.
That happened in the grocery stores.
Yes,
I guess.
yeah. No, I wasn't. And it all worked off pretty smooth, but I know we had things to happen. I'm sure we did. I guess he had more than I did, though, because we had a very good way. I never had anybody ever say anything rough to me. No customers never said nothing ugly to me. But they would if I said something ugly back to them.
Yeah.
You know, you bring on things like that. I didn't. But I had a way. See, he always...
Just kind of laughing it off with them, huh?
Yes, and then of this. if they didn't like it and it had a bad place on it or something like that, I'd say, well, I'm so sorry it did, but Thomas will make it right with you. Don't see, he had us to make it right, you see. He was my backstop.
Yeah.
Well, he always made it right.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah, he
you
did.
You knew he would
I
do
knew he
that.
would. You see, we didn't, he didn't want to lose a customer.
No, he carried good brands.
Yes,
I remember
good.
buying Arrow shirts
Oh,
there,
yeah.
and well,
Put on good sales
Mhm.
sometimes.
Yeah.
Now, if you want to ask me anything else more about the store, why, just ask me, but I just never did. But, you know, I had a personality, a way to keep those things down.
Mm-hmm.
He said I did. He said, he said, now you, he said, he said, see, what did he ask me? I forgot what word he asked me, and I said, now, Thomas, you know I just went to school at Benton. And well, I tell you, so I said, I just went to school at Benton, right where you did. And you know, I don't know, I didn't ever take a course that. And he said, I did, but I don't know as good as you do.
Well.
I said, well, I've always kind of known how to approach people.
Yeah.
To keep
Well, we're down now to just about a minute or so left, and I wonder if there's any particular thing that you want to make sure that you get on this program before we have to sign off.
Well, I can't think of anything.
How long has your husband been dead?
21 years.
That's been a long time,
And I've
but
lived-
you've had your children. You've had Chester Ray's been in the area, in town, as you
Yes,
say, nearby.
And he lives right here by
And
me.
you got your 2 grandsons.
Yes,
So,
I sure have.
You've been well blessed in that respect.
Yes, really good. I have in every one, Ray. Every way in the
Are you
world.
still able to go to church?
Yes, I'm still going to church. And let me tell you, I taught Sunday school 19 years. Sunday school class.
Yes, sir.
And you see, well, I hate to be braggy or anything, and I don't care whether this would go on that or not, but you know, I've been, I've been able financially and health too, to carry on, and I've lived with myself for that 21 years. And of course, the boys have to do things, but I don't have to ask for help.
Yeah.
My money I can.
Well, I certainly thank you. We've been visiting in the home of Miss Reba Powell today on our oral history broadcast. I'm Ray Mofield. We return you now to our studio.